Hey everybody, welcome to my first tutorial on using Blender to create 3D models of airplanes for real flight. When you first open Blender, this is kind of what you're greeted with. You've got your 3D window here. You've got your panels button or your buttons window down at the bottom, and then up at the top you have your preferences window. You really don't see the preferences, but if you slide up, kind of grab this with the middle mouse button, with the left mouse button, and slide it down, you can see your preferences. Some custom preferences that I like to set up is I like to enable the view name, and you can see that here, with the view name disabled and enabled. I like to zoom to the mouse position. If you have this off, when you zoom in, you're always going to zoom in on the active object, or you're always going to zoom in on the middle of the screen, I think. Yeah, there we go. Maybe it's not active object. Yeah, it just kind of seems to be zooming in and out without really any respect to anything on the screen. But what I like to do is I like to set it to zoom to the mouse position. That way, wherever you put the mouse, when you start zooming, that's where you're going to zoom in and out of. So zooming in and out of the cube, the camera. I just like that setup a little bit better. For view rotation, I like to turn on the turntable style rotation, and you'll have to play with the trackball and the turntable style rotation. The turntable style rotation, I think, just works a little bit better for me, and I prefer it as opposed to the trackball rotation that kind of seems to get me all messed up, and I never know what direction I'm looking. But I like the turntable rotation. Finally, over here, I like to set up what my middle mouse button does. You can have your middle mouse button either rotate your view or pan your view. I tend to pan around more than I rotate. So for me, having the panning function on the middle mouse button is a lot more useful than having rotate on the middle mouse button. If you do want to rotate your view, what you can do is you can hold down the shift key and then hold down the middle mouse button, and then you can rotate. Alright, so that's pretty simple. The last thing that I like to set up in preferences is this under edit methods. When you add a new object, I like to add that object aligned to my current view, and you'll have to play around with that to kind of see how you want it to function. But when I add a new object, I expect it to be aligned to the view that I'm looking at, not aligned to the to some global axis. Now we can slide that back up. The next thing that I like to do is I like to take advantage of my widescreen monitor. So having the buttons window down here at the bottom isn't really useful for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and I'm going to join areas, and I'm going to join down, and then up here at the top I'm going to right click and I'm going to split the area, and I'm going to split it about there. Then over here I'm going to take this view, and you can set it to be any of these things, but I want to set this to be my buttons window. And then you'll see that the buttons window is kind of there, and it's not really, you kind of have to scroll it around a little bit, but there's a fix for that. You right click and you change the panel alignment to vertical, and it blows everything up all crazy big. So I'm going to hold control, and then I'm going to scroll my middle mouse wheel to kind of zoom that out, and then I'm going to hold with my middle mouse button and slide it up there into the corner. Then I'm going to drag this and slide it over a little bit. Let's make that a little bit bigger. There we go. Good. Alright. The next thing that I want to do is from my top view. I always like to start in a top view. These 3D transform manipulators are kind of handy sometimes, I guess, but I really don't use them that much, so I'm going to turn those off so I'm not really seeing those. And if you want to move an object around, you basically highlight the object and then hit the G key, and then you can move it around. G key, and then move it around to where you want it. You can hit the S key and start scaling. or you can hit the R key and start rotating. G, S, and R are going to be really useful. I use those. Those are big tools in my kit. I'm going to go ahead and delete this default cube because I really don't need it. The last thing I like to do is I like to create a few lights to kind of light my scene. I'm not really going for mood lighting here. I'm going for maximum effect so that I can really see my model from every angle. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this light, and then I'm going to hold shift and right click on the camera. Then I'm going to hit Control P. I'm going to parent this light to this camera. Then I'm going to right click on the light again. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate this light, and I'm going to make a few of these and just kind of spread them around a little bit. There we go. Now if you click on the camera and you scale the camera, you're kind of scaling everything in the scene, and it moves your lights as well. So you can grab your camera and move it to where you want to move it to, and it moves all the lights as well. That way you get good illumination on your scene. One thing that is kind of annoying is that you don't want to try to model with all of these lights on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit A to select all, M to move, and these are your different layers. I always like to put my lights on the last layer, and then hit OK, and that just kind of declutters the scene a little bit. Now we've got a nice fresh board, completely empty canvas to start from, and I think we're ready to begin some modeling. Oh, one last thing. File. You want to save this as your factory default, or sorry, you want to save the default settings. You can hit Control U, or you can select it from the drop down menu. Save default settings. Now every time you open Blender, it will open in this format. And with that being said, I think we're ready to start doing some modeling.